What up, Footer Nation? Gary Hootenholla here, and welcome to a very special episode of the NYBS Ambassadors show, right here from the great state of New York. Now, this is a surprise show. We weren't going to actually have this show at all, and then, due to some circumstances, we decided, what the hell? Let's get together, let's have some fun, let's talk some Sasquatch in New York, and there's so much to talk about, with all this subject matter. With me is my brother from another mother, the hunter man himself, William. What's up, my man?
What's up, Gary? Hello to everybody in Footer Nations. Glad to be here.
We are super stoked to have you aboard, and I can't wait to get into these subjects of, a Bigfoot in the backwoods, in the backcountry. Something that we really don't talk about much within the field is we're so busy talking about structures and footprints and what to look for and howls and all the vocalizations, but we never really get into the subject matters of safety, what to look for while we're actually out in the bush and watch the animal behavior, because they can tell us so much information, which that's your wheelhouse as you're a backwoodsman. So we want to get into this because there's so many people interested in the Bigfoot phenomena that have now come into this as newbies, and they only go by what they see within social media or what they see on TV. But really, that's not what Bigfoot is really about in any kind of research, is what's on TV and what social media really talks about. There's a lot more in depth to it, and we want to get this word out to them. So figured you have this special show, and we'll get right into the subject matters. So Will, going into the backcountry as a brand new Bigfooter, let's keep it simple first before we get really into the meat of the stuff. What do you really need to understand when you enter the woods?
Well, for starters, I recommend that you gain a little experience on the field with being on the great outdoors, whether it's fishing, camping, or whatever. It just gives you a little bit of sense of security, knowing that you're ready to approach nature for what it is. But one of the most important things I want to address is that when you're looking for Bigfoot or something like that, I suggest you join a great group, such as Gary's group or any group that you guys decide what you want to do, and make sure that there are a bunch of guys who are open-minded and willing to share and help each other and share a lot of knowledge with one another. One thing about this group and why I chose this group to be in it was because not only is the knowledge is incredible, but because of the friendship and the understanding and comparing notes and trying to help others made a big difference. And for newbies, I think, you have to be aware of everything from safety to, the particular people you're with, and learning your whole area of where you're going to start your first research.
Yeah, and that's always where to start. You know what I mean? Like, if you do it by yourself, if you join a really good group of people, you have to start from the root of what you're doing. So like, Will came to me, you know what I mean? And we were talking, and sure enough, we formed an awesome brotherhood now. He's family to me. And that's kind of what happens a lot of times with these subject matters, is that, you meet really good people. They're always, into the same subject matter. Will and I, even if we took Bigfoot out of this whole equation, we still love the woods. We still are bush people. So there's more to talk about than just Bigfoot. So that's a good place to start, is when you form these relationships within these teams and these people, make sure you find people that you can get along with on a subject matter that's not just Bigfoot related. Because, we talk all day in our team of ambassadors throughout the whole state of New York about all different subject matters that half the time we're not even talking about Bigfoot. We're all roasting each other, having a good time. Because if you can't have a good time with who you are, with the people that you're with, then how can you trust them when you're out into the woods all by yourselves in the middle of nowhere for days at a time doing research? So that's a good place to start. Will, let's get right into it. So we have so many people out there that, are brand new to this subject matter. So here I am. I'm a brand new, pretend I'm a noob, okay? I'm going into the woods. I've been watching some Finding Bigfoot, all right? I see him knocking on trees and all that fun stuff. So I grab my rucksack. I go into the woods. right? But even before I do any of that stuff, because I've been watching TV, what do we need to start? Like, where do we start now? We found a team, we found a group, or you're going to do it by yourself. Where do we start?
Well, first thing is safety's first. Your gear. Your gear and the knowledge that you've acquired for yourself as you studied about what's out there in safety. Because, whether you're with a group or by yourself, safety becomes a factor. Because if you don't know navigation, or you don't know first aid, or you don't have some kind of set skill, in case of an emergency situation, how are you going to prepare yourself for the elements, or for the situations you face? You don't know what lies ahead. So my thing is, you can watch all the movies you want. You can listen to all the books and YouTube videos. It does not gonna do you any good when you're out there. So my thing is, first, your first proper assessment would be your gear, okay, your medical supplies. Second is your food, and then your ability of what you learned to go out and utilize in the field itself. But you also got to learn the area. You have to map out and plan your destination and know where you're going in and going out. And it's like a topo map. You got to read every structure, know which way you're going to start. But let Gary get into that with the questions first. But you really have to focus on yourself, and that's important, because if you don't, you can lose your head in the mix. Because if you, I always say, take the playbook and throw it in the trash can, because it's not the same thing when you're in the field.
100% on that, and you're 100%. I think that one of the, as a Bigfooter, like all right, Footer Nation, if you don't know me, I've been doing this a very long time. Okay, I run the New York Bigfoot Society. I've been a Bigfooter for a very long time. Once again, though, you need to understand that what you learn in the Bigfoot field, you have to then slowly unlearn, and that's been my struggle being a person in the Bigfoot field. I've done national TV, I've done international TV, okay? The things that I've learned from all these experts per se, and there's no such thing as an expert in the Bigfoot field. So if you ever hear that terminology, then you got to just question the person saying that. But in the same sense, you need to understand that we have to unlearn a lot of the things that we've learned through the Bigfoot field. And what I mean by that is, like Will personally said, throw the playbook away. Yeah, throw it away. Once you get into those woods, everything changes. All right. You can sit there and think by watching Bigfoot documentaries and by watching different TV shows that you kind of have an understanding of what you're going to do when you go into the woods. That may be true in some form, but the woods will dictate what happens to you. It's kind of like when you climb a mountain. The mountain decides if you're going to summit it that day or not. You don't decide that. The mountain does. So the woods are the same thing. You need to understand, once again, when you're going into the backcountry, all bets are off. So you may have that playbook, but like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do some tree knocking, I'm going to do some vocalizations, but things can get turned around real quick. So let's start. Our boy Joe from Western New York Bigfoot is here. My man Joe, what's up, Joe? So let's get right into navigation. Okay, because that's first off that's going to be your most important start of anything. Already we have our rucks packed. Talk about navigation.
Well, funny thing is, there's different type of navigations. Today's modern society, with all the technology, you have all these GPS and Garmin and all this crap. It's great, it's excellent, pretty much one of the best things to ever have. But what happens if you're in a situation where the higher you go climbing the mountains, or you go into a rock formation, and the metals in the ground tend to alter the radio waves that you got, and your GPS isn't working? How do you navigate? You have to learn how to read a compass. Okay. The basics in compass is simple, because you got, negative north, south, east, west and stuff. Anybody can follow that. But when you're in an area with terrain, and you got to learn how to pace how many steps, and your coordinates, like for me, for instance, basic, compass reading is simple for the average woodsman. But when someone says, okay, you got to go to, I'll give you some coordinates: 2228.75, negative right, 160 degrees, then go left 22 miles, and make a right, and you find coordinates 156. then you start scratching your head and say, what in the hell did I just hear? So you don't have to get technology crazy or even old school crazy so deep into it, but you need to know your bearings from north, west, south, and where's the nearest road. That's why when you plan your trips, you get a big map, see where the nearest roads are, waterways and access ways. So if you do get lost and you need to rely on a compass, which is probably happens a lot of times, you want to make sure that, you're going to go in the right direction that's going to lead you to that waterway or to that road. But the problem is, what happens when it gets dark? One of the most scariest situations of being on the outdoors is nightfall. When nightfall comes, you don't want to be walking in the dark with a compass is useless. So you might want to just sit it out and camp out for the night until the next morning before you track onto your next move, because you could be walking right over a cliff. You can walk into a big pothole that's probably, or an old well. There's so much dangers in the woods. Being wood smart, knowing when to go and when not to go, and understanding the conditions to make a certain decision. So you have to take that to consideration as a first time squatcher. It's not just squatching; it's being an outdoorsman with safety, because you one little mistake of not paying attention, you can lose your bearings, your ways. You'll be walking and you'll see a million trees and you just totally forget what happened. I recall when I was a young kid in a snowstorm, and I decided to sit on a ridge and I took a little cat nap. Soon as that snow was coming down and I woke up, everything seemed so different. I kind of thought I was lost, all because everything changed. So just think, weather is the most dangerous thing in the woods, because it can do a lot of things. Fog, snow, heavy downpour, rain makes conditions slippery for tracking or whatever, or even walking. This is just a little sample. So when you think about navigation, planning your navigation, marking your territory, even when you go in, you mark your way in. I use a technique too with a lot of times is I'll go in my car, I put a piece of tin foil on the floor mat of the car, which is soft. I step on it with my boot, and then I put my name, the date, and the location of where I'm going, and leave it on my windshield. God forbid I get lost or something happens as a first time outdoorsman. And a search party has to look for me. They know what the track looks like. They're not going to be following somebody else's track. They know my bearings and my coordinates of which direction I'm going. So it's a safety thing. So every little thing that you learn is important for yourself.
Yeah, and navigation is one of the most important things that people don't understand. As a Bigfooter, now I'm going to take this into Bigfoot terms. So Will just told you about coming into the woods and basically getting out of the woods, because that's the whole thing. You can sit there and read coordinates, latitude, longitude coordinates. They mean nothing to anybody unless you have the understanding. Now, as a Bigfooter, as I'm going into the woods, why would I want to know navigation? It's simple. I find a track, and I'm all about tracks, just like my buddy Joe from Western New York Bigfoot's research organization. Tracks tell a story, right? Because that means, oh, look we have a Bigfoot here. The Bigfoot stepped here. That is our best piece of evidence that we can gain from the woods, right, Will? I mean, you would agree with that, other than a body, yep. But or a personal sighting. But if we're looking for physical evidence, a track for us is one of the best things. So now I have that track that's on the ground. I have my cool Garmin GPS, all right? Because I love my Garmin GPS, but like Will says, you cannot rely on those things. Why? Because a lot of times the satellites, and I can tell you this from firsthand experience, the satellites don't always line up with the GPS. So it will tell you that you're in this spot, right? But you're actually could be so many hundreds of yards away from where it's telling you that you are. Once you get into heavy tree cover, the satellites are all off. All bets are off. Especially some of the places that we go as Bigfooters is the pines. My favorite place to do Bigfoot research is the pines. Well, once you get into those pine forests, that heavy canopy of pine trees blocks out a lot of things. And what it blocks out the light, it blocks out satellite transmission, all that stuff. So if I'm to go in the woods and then mark where I found a track now, mark it all up and say I casted it. Okay, so now I have my nice plaster in it. And I leave because that plaster needs to set up. You can get it to set up for a whole day. That's perfect, right? But now I look back, I do my little waypoint on my GPS. That's a key thing before I go any further. If you buy a GPS, they're great tools because I love mine because you got to know how to use it properly. Most people that buy these very expensive Garmin GPSs and these watches don't actually read all the instructions and or learn how to use it properly. So they'll go
Exactly.
out, right, Will? So they'll go out, they'll turn it on, and then they see their little line. And they're like, oh, I'm going up my little line going into the woods. But that doesn't mean anything. That line, yes, will help you get back to the car. So yes, that will help in some ways. But when you need to start waypointing information, you need to start data logging information, you no longer know what to do because now you're playing with all the buttons in your GPS. And then on top of that, you can really screw up your track. So if I'm in my GPS and I find a track, right, and I waypoint it, T1, which stands for track 1, which then if I'm in my sitting there typing in all that stuff, I can then screw my GPS up to then I lose my track. Then what? Because now I'm in the woods. I lost my track because I'm relying on my GPS, and now everything's screwed up. All right. So learn to use your GPSs if you're going to use them. Make sure to use them properly. Going back to the original part, when you go back to that track, the GPS may bring you to a different spot within, say, 100 yards, 200 yards. It may not be the same exact spot you were at. So like Will said, you got to think of other ways to navigate once you're in the forest. So
exactly.
there's tricks and tips. Go ahead.
I can give you a little tip. Trail markers. You can get little trail markers at every 100 yards or every 75 yards. You set a little marker on a tree. 90% of the time when you go in one direction, you're going to come back the same direction because you got to go back to your truck or your campsite or whatever it may be. I never used to like to put the red trail markers. I know it sounds, but I had a little bit of more experience than most people. But what I did use is I used to have thumbtacks that had reflectors on them, and you couldn't see them. I didn't want nobody to know my location. So as I was walking during the daytime, I would set them. I would stick one on a tree bark and keep going another 100 yards, and then stick another one on a tree bark, another 100. Well, I got so deep into the woods interior, then before you know it, from scouting or hunting, started getting dark. 4 o'clock at dark, daylight started dropping fast. All of a sudden, bam, pitch black. Now I knew I couldn't see my way out, but at least with my flashlight, I would beam it straight out, and I would follow each thumbtack. I would see them light up in the dark, and I would grab each one as I walked back to my area. So I would have a set route. So I pulled each one, put it back in my pocket, grab the next one, put it back in my pocket, and I could literally travel at dark. But as for beginners, my suggestion to you is not only get a map and learn the area and the roadways and everything, but also carry markers with you. If you don't have markers, make markers. You can take a couple of branches and make a stick, cross it on the floor, revealing your location. You can leave little things behind, and then on your way back, you pick each one up. But just look at your time factor. What time do you have? Is this going to be in the morning? If it's in the morning, everything's visible. But what happens is a lot of times we get so caught up on searching for tracks, evidence, and being on the field that we lose track of time. So we have to be prepared for whatever might happen if in case time runs out and it becomes a factor and a problem during our way to get back to the car or the campsite.
Yep. And one thing that I also do too is I bring that really bright orange, tape that you can tie, the tie tape.
Yes.
And you can reuse it all. You can reuse it all the time.
All the
all right.
time.
And it's very highly all the time. And it's very highly reflective. And I cut strips of it. So I cut all these strips. And then as I'm going into the woods, if I feel like I'm in an area, especially if I'm doing a grid situation, a lot of times when you start making grids, you're in one section of the woods. So you start gridding off where you are to what you're going to do in the woods. Those reflective tapes, just like what you said, those reflective pins that you put in the tree, those will help you a lot. So, yep, Melody, perfect. I use pink reflective tape. Exactly. Like it's basically the same. And you can tie these bright colors. So when you're coming back through the woods, when it starts getting dark, you can see where you are. The main thing is leave no trace, though. leave no trace. So
Exactly.
once you're done in that area, remove everything that you're taking with you. Don't just leave it there, because I've seen that plenty of times when I'm hiking trails and things like that. And people leave their garbage tied up to trees and shit, pardon my language. But it's like, why? Like, you just littered the woods, first off. And second off, we see that you're here. We don't want to know that you're here. So unless you're being rescued. But at the end of the day, those kind of things. So, all right. So now Footer Nation knows about, navigation. And I'm hoping beginning navigation. It's super, super important. Even the most experienced person in navigation can still get lost. So you need to remember that even with the skill sets that we all have, a lot of factors can still play into that. Dehydration, you start not thinking right. Heat exhaustion, you're not feeling good. You need to take all these weather, as we talk about weather all the time. We need to take a lot of different factors into these, because as the day goes on and we're in the woods and we start to get tired and we start to get dehydrated and we're not thinking right, it's very, very easy
Exactly.
to get turned around. So, and that's one thing. He's
Getting to
like,
that
I love you,
Getting to
Molly.
that dehydration part, one of the biggest things a lot of Bigfooters, I would say, and a lot of hunters and outdoorsmen, even backpackers do, is, when you carry your water, you want to reduce a lot of weight carrying stuff. So I recommend like the camelbacks that you put in your back. But a lot of times what happens is that people put it in between the backpack and their back itself. And what happens is at the course of the day, the sun beating on you, that water gets really, really hot, and then all of a sudden you're drinking hot water and it's really a little bit uncomfortable. So, in the camelback, I used to do is for myself is I would pack it in with ice cubes and then fill it up with fresh water. And guess what? I'm walking around. My back is ice cold. I was feeling great, man. I was like jumpy. I didn't get tired or nothing because I had an ice pack in the back of my back. But when I drank water, I was so cool and hydrating. And I add a little Pedialyte into my water because I wanted just that little extra electrolytes in case, I stretch it on the duration on the field. And the more you walk and the more you search and the more you do, you consume a lot of energy and you want to be, hydrated. So that's important. So good point, Gary, on that.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Camel packs are so easy to bring with you in the woods. And even those, I carry those hiking pouches. You just get the otter pouches.
Yeah.
They carry 2 liters. You can crunch them up into absolutely nothing. So when you're done with them, you roll them right up. What I do is, because I have 2 girls, I have 2 daughters, I take their hair ties and I'll hair tie them so they stay nice and firm in their little bunch, and I'll just slide them down in the backside. So once again, Footer Nation, I say this all the time. We live in the time of gear. Like, all these companies make so much gear, so there's no excuse to not have all the stuff that we need. Especially for rain and things like that. Gore-Tex is amazing. That stuff will keep you dry for days. With that. So now we're out in the woods. Navigation. What's next? So now we're looking. Say we find a track. All right. So Will, we found a track. You're brand new to the field. What are we now gonna do when we observe this track?
Well, I suggest as a Bigfooter and your first time out, if you do find a track, the first thing you want to do is log its coordinates down and immediately take the measurements. Because one of the biggest problems with most people on the field searching for tracks is that even if they find one, they don't analyze the track properly, and then there's a lot of important information that is lost. So you want to measure the length, the width, the depth of the track, and then you want to look at the track's consistency on the ground. Is the ground wet? Is the ground dry? Because you want to know if that track is a fresh track or you're looking at an old track, and if it's a completely fresh, just made track, you might know that you better keep an eye on your surroundings because it might be watching you. While you're tracking any animal, whether it's Bigfoot or wildlife, every time you follow a track, just look around, take a few steps, stop, turn around, look around. And I like to kneel down on the ground. Why? Because if there's something watching me, it has to stand to see what I'm doing. It makes the biggest mistake. You know how many times I kneel down and all of a sudden the deer picked up its head? or a bear happened to stand up on his hind quarters because he says, wait a minute, I was watching him, where did he go? And he makes that initial mistake. Being being aware of your surrounding is very, very critical. But when you find that track, logging it, dating it, measuring it, and everything just before you start to cast it. And then when you do cast it and you continue searching for that track, mark the area, which even with the little markers that you have, mark that area and continue on as you go along and looking for more sign. That way, when you come back to that track, you recover your cast, you cover your markers, and then you can mosey on. But as a tracker, there's different factors you got to look at. Some people like to follow. I like to go backwards. I want to find out where this thing was coming from. I want to know what's its bedding area and certain things. Just as you look for forward information, I like to look for backwards information because I need to see the overall picture, especially in that particular area. I know he's going to go up a mountain, but you're not going to walk a whole entire mountain uphill trying to find him. I want to know, why did he come off that mountain? Was he eating in the lowlands? Was it farmlands? Was it in an urban area where people live in? Every field data is critical. As a beginner, take note of it. You have to put it in black and white. Everything is useless unless you log it and put it in black and white so you can present your findings. And once you establish if you're in a group, then you give it to your team leader, and then everybody together can analyze it. Because just because you found a track, it might not be an actual track. It could be a double step track from a bear. It could be a person wearing snowshoes. It could be anything. You have to have your group take a look at it, analyze it before you could come to a conclusion of what is and what is not. This is what research is all about. It's teamwork. It's not just simple one person work and then hiding to say, well, I don't want nobody to know. I made a commitment that when I'm in the field, whatever research belongs to Gary, we study it, we analyze it. We need to find answers. Is it or is it not out there in the Hudson Valley or the Catskill regions or the whole upstate New York? We need to find proof. So we're flesh and blood guys, so we're looking for every little important piece of evidence.
Now, let's talk strategy, because for Footer Nation, a lot of the beginners, we're trying to help you here. So if you're new to the field, we're trying to give you different strategies from people that are experienced in the backwoods. All right. Will and I are very experienced backwoodsmen. All right. He is the survivalist. All right. I'm a mountaineer. Together, the backwoods, the backcountry is like our stomping ground. So now we find the track, like you just said. We documented the track. We documented where we are. When you talk about going backwards, okay, what strategies as a researcher can people put into play to then set up something following behind you that would then alert you to something did come behind you?
I train a lot of guys in survival and wilderness in the mountains. When we're working as a team, and I like to work with a team because not only that you enjoy the day better and you can gather more information, sometimes as a team, one person could spot something that you might overlook, whether it's finding evidence or whether it's something to be aware of or even safety concerns. We can't always focus on it all at the same time. So sometimes the buddy system is the most important system when it comes to hiking, traveling, or whatever. And even if you do decide you want to do something on your own, I suggest you leave information with family members and everybody, your whereabouts, your whole strategy of what you're doing, because it's critical. Because God forbid something happens. Millions of people get lost in the woods all the time. Many people have never been found. So it's very, very important that you pay attention to everything. Now, as a group, if I was in a group of 5 or 10 or even a group of 3, we spread out on let's say we're walking a wood road. Each one was spread out approximately maybe 50 feet to 25 feet apart. Then the team leader in the front, as he's walking ahead, and you got the person in the middle, and then you got the person in the rear. Okay. Each one's got to stay at the same pace, but the guy in the rear will always, every few minutes that he's walking, he has to stop, turn around, and look behind him. If the team leader picks up his arm, the same thing like military signals, something's out there, everybody gets down, and then everybody looks in what we call a ranger file. Or the team leader looks forward. He's got a 360 degrees right in front of him, left and right. The guy in the middle, behind the team leader, would look to the far right. He's got another 60 degrees to the right, and the guy behind that person will look to the left 60 degrees, and then so each one will look parallel to another, and then the guy in the rear will turn around and look 60 degrees until all is clear, until all is heard, and everything's marked safe. Then they will signal, the rear will signal everything good from behind, and the front will signal, let's get up and go, and we continue our research. The reason we do this is because there's a lot of people in the woods. We don't want pranksters, young kids. It could be, some hippie out there in the woods that we don't know what he's up to. Anything source of danger. It could be a mountain lion, bear, Squatch. We want to be smart on how we approach things, but not to be fearful, but to be cautious and calculating. Same thing as we make the movement. If we find a structure, we'll signal each other that there's a bridge crossing, there's a stream that we got to cross, which is a safe spot to the stream to cross. Team leader has to acknowledge that. The rear has to acknowledge we're all clear, and boom, we keep continue. As a researcher and as an outdoorsman, when I taught survival classes, I had actual guys in the Marines, I had guys in the Army, and I had a couple of other guys that were outdoorsmen, survivalists, and it's kind of funny because everybody has skills, don't get me wrong, but everybody was bragging and acting like GI Joes and acting like the top survivor guys in the world. But when I said to them at the beginning of the rut, we're going to go for some serious training, goes, yeah, we got everything. I says, okay, take half of your gear and put it back in the car. They say, what? It says, yeah, because now you're going to test your abilities to the fullest. So what happens if that food runs low? What happens if your supply is no longer and you're going to be surprised the frustrations that these guys acquire. Now, here, these guys are military trained. These guys are survivalist trained. And when you put them in that situation where they really have to think for themselves, you'd be surprised that, like Gary mentioned about people forget things. I don't care how good you are. You can't know everything and remember everything. And we make a lot of mistakes and people panic. Mm-hmm. And here we are, two guys in the military, top-notch guys, a lot of years experience, and they couldn't do two things. They couldn't light a fire, and they couldn't find food. So here's an example. No matter what you do, everything that you learn is a very important principle for yourself in survival and the woods, because not only doing the research work, but if anything happens, we don't want you to be a liability to yourself and make a mistake and cost lives, and we don't want no one getting injured. We're responsible for each other. That's why we work together as a team. That's why I always say the buddy system's always the best system. I know a lot of guys want to go out there on themselves. If you got a lot of woodsman experience, then fine, by all means. But seriously, if you're a beginner, I suggest the buddy system. So stick with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the buddy system is always the way to go. You know what I mean? And it's true. Like, we don't know everything. I mean, there's been plenty of times, I can speak for myself, even with the experience I have, I get into the woods and I either forgot to pack something in my rucksack. So here I am missing something. And as a Bigfoot researcher, I never bring my casting material with me half the time. I don't know why. It's always at home. And then I'll find a track and I'd be like, well, I don't even have my casting material. There's something stupid like that. And that's not even survival related. So then you get into the woods, and once again, so much stuff can happen. You twist an ankle. Something as little as twisting an ankle you could be stuck in the woods. Because that's a serious thing when that happens in the woods. So there are all these things that can happen, and the buddy system, once again, it's the way to go. Footer Nation, the reason we're talking about this is people do go missing in the woods all the time. All the time. A perfect example is I said this on me and my daughter's show an hour ago. They just did a rescue up at Tongue Mountain in Lake George because people were hiking with their cell phones as flashlights. I mean, that's the reality of what we're dealing with. Like, they're not prepared. Even though you think you might be out of the woods before it gets dark, the woods will dictate what happens to you. Our knowledge gives us the best case to get out of the woods in one piece. Always that 1%, and people, regardless if you believe in Bigfoot or not, okay, this has nothing even just to do with Bigfoot. But if you believe in Bigfoot or not, 1%, there's that 1% chance, guess what? You're not coming back out of the woods. You're not. I mean, there's so much that can happen. And like you say, like Mike said, missing 411 hunters. Yeah, I mean, missing 411 is amazing documentaries. I agree with you, Mike. I love watching them. And those are just a small tidbit of things that go of missing reports. Always carry multiple headlamps. Exactly, Max. It's, and extra batteries. That's common sense. And I'm glad you guys are bringing this up and ladies are bringing this up because it's common sense. It needs to be. But I can't tell you how many times all right, one is none, two is one. One is none, two is one. I live by that. Will, do you want to explain what that is real quick?
But well, like you said, you have to think about so many different options. Like Gary stated about the flashlight, you always got to carry more batteries and more lights. I carry a headlamp. I carry one on my pocket. I carry one on my clip of my hat as well. I carry a number of lights, but then also I carry the most simplest thing, a simple candle, glow sticks. You laugh when you go to the kids store and you buy $1.99 glow sticks from Walmart.
Yeah.
Listen, when they have the sales on Halloween, I buy 10, 20 of them and I put them in my
Yeah.
backpack. You never know what light source. It's the same thing with firing. You just have to be multitasking with a lot of multiple systems of the same system, as I would say. In other words, when we think about fire starting, there's millions of type of fire startings. So, you want to carry each and every one in case one fails in the other. Even a simple thing that most people don't even carry, a simple magnifying glass. And a sunny day, you can utilize that. We talked about this earlier, Gary, joking around, who says, you know what? Carry a condom. Condoms in the pack. You laugh. Why would a backpacker need condoms? First of all, you can carry water with it. Second of all, you can take a clear condom or a plastic bag, fill it up with water, and start a fire with the sunlight with just water, using it as a magnifying glass. There's many different things. The reason why me and Gary bushcraft is not because we not only because we want to be good at it, but it's also a key factor in survival, because if one of our colleagues get hurt, I can make, a dragging cot where I can lay the guy on a cot and we can lift the other end and I can drag him, because there's no way I'm going to carry 100-pound, 200-pound, or even a 300-pound guy for more than 2 or 3 miles on my back. There's no way it's not happening. I need to utilize a way to get him out of the woods of safety. But what if I'm by myself? I sprain my ankle. I need to know how to make a splint. I need to know how to make crutches out of tree branches, so I can take my time, even if it takes forever, one step at a time until I get to proper safety and whatever. But if I have to hunker down for a day or so, at least I have the proper teachings. Bushcraft is so important because it teaches many factors that's out of the box. When you think out of the box, there's no, everybody that goes camping follows guidelines. You buy the proper technology and everything. But what happens when all that fails? And you really need to dig deep. This is what bushcraft is about. And, our ancestors back in the 1800s, they did it. And a lot of mountaineers did it, and many trappers. But bushcraft is the most and far most important thing to learn.
Yeah, and I agree. And now, Will, you'll probably agree with me with this also. Maybe not. There's different types of bushcraft. Now, excuse me. As beginners, once again, this is important stuff that we're talking about. We want you to be safe while you're in the woods. That's why we're talking about this. We want you to come out in one piece and actually make it back out, okay? You can't be cocky and to think that we're always going to make it back out in one piece. We're naive to think that, but there's different types of bushcraft. Now we have the bushcraft, and Will, stop me if I'm wrong. We have the bushcraft that, we watch all the cool videos, and all these people have cool channels, and we all watch it. And we're like, wow, they just built this cool shelter, and they have a nice little wood area that they build, and they make like little tables. They have their little fire pit that looks really cool. And it's almost like it's glamping for bushcraft. Like they basically make like a whole camp area that they spend all this time sawing, making the bushcraft saws, which is great and fun. Trust me, like I enjoy doing that stuff. But I kind of call that glamping of bushcraft, because they really get involved into it. Then you have bushcraft that kind of what we're talking about is emergency situations, what you can take out of the woods and the forest to make what we do safer, easier, and help us get back out in one piece. I mean, would you agree with that, Will?
I totally agree with that. I hate to say this, but TV is staged. Everything you see there, they had planned and everything. Try doing exactly that by yourself with just a knife in your hand and utilizing every material that's in the woods. It's pretty tough. If you
It's
don't
hard.
remember how to do it, you're gonna have a hard time. So when I hate to say this, you can read all the books, you can watch all the TV shows, but you need hands-on.
Hmm.
Hands-on experience is the most important. That's why even as my downtime, I walk to the park with my kids when they were little, or when we go in the woods, we build structures, and after we get done, we time ourselves how fast we can build it, how durable is that structure. We test each other on it, and then we leave it there, so that if the next person walks, they can use that structure for protection or whatever. Wildlife can use it for cover. Uh, or the kids in the local park in New York City, they laugh. They say, "Oh, look what we found! Now there's a playhouse." But the reality is that practice makes perfect, and
Yep.
when we talk about bushcraft, it's broken into different segments of it.
Hmm.
And we're talking about major survival. We're talking about
Yep.
medical. We're talking about important things. Anybody can build a structure to sleep, but when you start to really build stuff that you need that is important, what if I lost a fishing rod? How could I fish without, a fishing pole?
Hmm.
Using trees and setting different type of pins on the ground with lines and certain little tricks and trades. Everything is an experience, but to tell you the truth, it's really tough when you go out there. And what about your gear, your knife? The knife might be a good knife, or you might use your knife to do a couple of cuts, and then the blade's gone and it's a piece is a crap. So
Yep.
your gear, the integrity of your gear is just as important. You just can't buy cheap stuff. I know you
Mm-mm.
can buy a lot of easy stuff that's simple, but if you really need to go out there and stick it out for a certain amount of time, you need, durable products, you need strong products. Um, like I said, Gary's right. The bushcraft is a lot more to bushcraft than that. Bushcraft is everything in many different ways, and
Yep.
it's time. You need to take the time and really dig deep in yourself and do it. You just can't talk about it. You can't read a book. Oh, I read a book. This is how you do it. Yeah, but when you go to do it, what are you looking for? And then all of a
Yep.
sudden you get frustrated because you can't actually duplicate what that person did, or you don't know the right materials for that.
Yep. And this is
Happens.
what this is why I love Joe so much. So as you were saying that you and your girl build these shelters and leave them there, I had the same thought as Joe just posted. I'm like, I wonder how many Bigfoot nests are actually bushcraft piece shelters that people made and just left. I mean, let's be real. Most people,
That's a big possibility because there's a
there's
lot of
so
people
many.
who do that. And you know
Yeah.
what? A Bigfoot is an opportunist. If you think
Hmm.
about an animal that's 10 feet tall, weighing over 500 or 600 pounds, that live his life out in the elements, that animal is on the highest survival mode than we'll ever imagine. And it can utilize by making its own structures, but it also can stay in a lot of people's structure. Now, if you go in the woods and you find a structure, is it man-made or is it actually Squatch made? Can you
That's
actually
hard.
determine that? You can determine that. You just have
Yeah.
to look at it very, very
Hmm.
carefully.
Yep.
Um, what does, my thing with Squatches is that it could be an opportunist too. You can go find an old abandoned shed in the woods or a cabin or anything. I just got a call from a buddy up in Schoharie County in Gilboa, New York, and he says, "Hey, Will, remember Pop's old cabin?" I says, "Yeah." He said he went to go visit it. He hasn't been there for years, and tree fell on it or whatever. He went and opened the door, and now Pop's two bears come running right out of the bottom of that cabin. And so it makes you wonder, the same way these animals find that structure to survive or sleep under in the harsh conditions and the weather, I guarantee you that if there's a Squatch out there, he's utilizing structures, caves, shelters, every little thing, even if it's man-made.
Exactly, and then we have to. But all right, well, I mean, okay. We're on the subject matter. One thing that I've always kind of pondered, right? We have all these Adirondack lean-tos all over the state, right? Lean-tos in the woods that sit there for all of us hikers to kind of chill in and sleep or whatever we do in them. So one thing I've always kind of pondered is we never hear about any kind of Bigfoot sightings in these lean-to areas that, if we're going by size, A Bigfoot can fit in a lean-to. These lean-tos are large enough to hold a Bigfoot. A lot of these bushcraft shelters that we make, I mean, let's be real, they're not that big. We're not making, mansions
Right.
out of, you know what I mean? But these lean-tos that are just naturally sitting there, I have seen the bears. I've come across, we have seen a lot of bear sign at lean-tos because it's free feeding. And let's talk about that. We have hikers in the woods, pandemic. All these new hikers are in the woods. People don't hold their food properly. They don't bring bear canisters. They don't even know what a bear canister is. In the Adirondacks right now, if you have to have a bear canister if you camp out. It's the law. Okay. In the Catskills, it is now also. So we have all these people, but let's think about Bigfoot's an opportunist, right? Why then do you think, Will, that we don't hear about Bigfoot sightings near lean-tos when there's people there? People are food, people are entertainment. Lean-tos are a shelter type situation. So it's actually a perfect, in these lean-tos are in the middle of the forest, right? So you have to actually hike in to get to a lot of them, miles in. Why do you think we don't really hear about the Bigfoot sightings in these areas?
I believe the reason you don't hear about sightings in lean-tos or certain things is because they're, to be honest with you, just like wildlife, they're avoiding mankind. A lot of times you don't realize this, but any structure you built, you're leaving scent, human scent, and you're leaving evidence of yourself in that particular area. They are doing their best to avoid you. Why do you think they are the masters of concealment? They don't want to be around you. I don't want to be around you. So think about why us researchers want to avoid areas with high population density of people and civilization, because we know that Bigfoots are going to avoid that area like a plague. They don't want to be disturbed. They want to be living in their comfortable environment with their families or their situation or their social life and social structure. They don't want to be harassed by the presence of man. Neither does every wildlife species. The reason we see wildlife every now and then is because they have to do two things. They either eat or they have to travel. So we bump into the crosshairs of their travel route, or we see them in the fields eating just before dark or something. It's always a food source or it's a travel route. So in reality, wildlife avoid you like a plague. That's why when you're researching and you're finding areas, we need to find evidence of their movements, their patterns, what we can find, and even studying other wildlife. I was on the page when we joked around with my buddy Joe. He's on here now, and we talk about scat. Now, the reason why I brought up scat is because when you see droppings, just like any other animals, what animal did it come from? And if you found a Sasquatch, was it a person that just pooped just walking by, or was it a real Sasquatch? When you look at the consistency and the moisture on a scat, it can tell you if it's fresh or not. You break it open, if it's with a stick. If it's real soft and very, very wet, and yet it's a dry day or whatever, most likely it's a fresh scat that just been made. Now if it's dry and brittle and you break it and it's kind of like clumped, like fibers, then it's probably a week old, a few days old. But if you break it and it's like powder form, like a rock, then it's weeks to a month old or something like that. So you want to know on the scat first is identification. That's why whether we research in Squatch or not, we need to understand wildlife, because wildlife teaches us. Once you understand this wildlife, you're able to find the Squatch. Squatch rely on wildlife for feed, to eat, or for clothing or whatever. We don't know what their agenda is, but we know that wildlife and Squatch coexist with each other, and they feed, on each other, or they simply share that same environment. They're so used to each other, they actually just, a deer could probably walk by a Squatch while he's walking the field and just keep going about his business unless he's being hunted. But any animal that's in the field would avoid you. Coyotes avoid you. That's why if you look at the trappers, they dye their traps. Descent their traps from them. They use latex or rubber gloves. In the wintertime, they pour salt on the tracks to keep them from freezing. There's a reason for that, man. And then your trap placement on how you set them traps in order for them to harvest that particular animal or for food or whatever it may be. The way we conduct ourselves in the woods as researchers is going to be an important factor, whether we're going to leave a telltale sign or we're actually chasing everything out of the woods. We don't want to chase everything out of the woods. We want to blend in there without disturbing them. But at the same time, we need to be careful how we present ourselves and approach certain things, and how we do, especially when we leave trash, especially when you're walking around grabbing branches as you're walking through the woods with your bare hands, you're leaving a scent line. And either a predator can follow you because you left your scent line, or you're leaving the evidence for if something was looking at you, he realized you're there. He's, oh, there's a person there. I'm getting out of here. Bye. He's gone. So think about that, guys.
Well, even let's take it one step further. Okay. Melly Dent, this said perfectly. So right, human scent, they can smell us. That's my personal opinion, is that's why trail cameras don't work, is because we sent up the whole entire area, putting up one camera. The tree, we're touching the trees, we're touching the camera. We've walked to the area. We're walking all around the tree, all around that whole area. We're scenting that whole area. Now, I just want to build off of what you just said. All right, not even your hands will. We walk through the bush. That stuff rubs on our clothes. That stuff rubs on our jackets. It rubs on our pants, our shoes. We're walking through the woods. If you're wearing gloves, you'll walk through your gloves. If you smoke cigarettes, that stink is going out there. You're leaving that trail all behind you on all these little leaflets and branches as you're walking through the woods. It's not like when we walk through the woods, we don't touch anything with our clothes, right? There's bushes, there's branches, and you don't even need to use your hands. That's on your body. Our clothes, our laundry detergent, all that stuff. So we're leaving from the minute we get out of that car to the minute we're walking up into the woods. You just left a whole entire scent path all the way to where you're going. I mean,
exactly.
It's that common. Take a bloodhound. We take these dogs. I used to train scent dogs back in the day when I was a dog trainer, and I could take I could take a bloodhound or a hound type dog, and then take that dog, and it could track you right to where you are. It'll track you right to where you are. So if we can do that with a dog, right, a simple dog, even though that's what that dog's bred for, is scent work, then you're talking about a Sasquatch that would be the apex predator of the forest. It would know you're there even before you're there. Like, it knows you're there. It smells you downwind. That's why I always find it funny when a lot of these people, I posted it on the page one day. I'm like, why do people that wear camouflage smoke cigarettes? Why they're wearing camouflage in the woods? Why?
Exactly.
What's the point?
I'd be very honest with you. As a hunter, I pay attention to a lot of detail. When we talk about camouflage, you can wear camouflage, but we can't distinguish whether they're colorblind or not. Like deer see black and white, certain animals see certain color phases. I don't think the camouflage is going to make an important factor in you getting close to one or not. I think what it really comes down to is your positioning of like you just stated, downwind. Paying attention to the wind is very important. You don't want to walk towards a trail where the wind's blowing from behind you forward, because whatever's in front of you is gonna get wind of you in a downwind, and then you're gonna be blown out of the air. They're gonna blow right out of the area, and you're not gonna see anything. Knowing where to enter on the particular area on that particular day, on the wind conditions and the weather's a factor. One of my favorite things, and you admitted this before, and we talked about this, Gary, and even with Joe, I think one of the best conditions in Sasquatching is the shittiest conditions. I know you guys are gonna hate the rain, the cold, the high winds, or you're gonna hate certain conditions. But you start with the high winds first. The reason why I like to hunt high winds is because the leaves are rattling. It's camouflaging my sound. The scent is blowing in so many different directions. It's confusing. The animal cannot determine exactly what location are you coming from. So what does an animal do in high winds? They lay right down and they don't even move because they can't determine if a coyote is going to stalk the deer. A lot of deer like to bed down on the high winds till the wind calms down. Then they go about their business. The reason for that is because of the movement of everything. They cannot afford to take a chance because their senses become diluted. Now, the winds is one of the factors. Okay, scent control, we talked about that before. The rain, the favorite rain. You know how much success I had in bad weather because all these squatchers, if there was a squatcher out there, or hunters or people, don't like to walk in the rain. They're like, it's raining today. I am not going out. But guess what? The animals are saying, yeah, it's raining today. We're going to walk around. You know why? their predators can't hear them.
Exactly.
They're so elusive and the ground is wet, so they're so comfortable and getting around the area. And the reason why they travel in the rain is because when the animals walk through the water on a rainy day, their scent is being washed to the ground. So a lot of times you don't realize this, but the scent is on the ground. Unless you're a bloodhound, it's a great day for you. But if you're a
Hmm.
squatch or a bear or something, they're not going to find the game because the game is scentless in the air. They're testing the wind. That's why they lick their noses all the time. But if
Yep.
the scent is washed down or washed away, they become semi-scentless. So think about the rain conditions. There's nobody in the woods. It's all yours. Squatch is comfortable. But the greatest part about weather is the day after the heavy storms and the rain for tracks. Tracks become so visible. You know they're gonna be fresh because once that pouring rain, if there's a track out there, it's gonna wash off. But the next day after the rain, it's gonna be the best time to start looking for tracks. Every animal track you're gonna see is gonna be visible and it's gonna be fresh. So it helps a lot. But also the conditions are so severe, people just don't like it. And it gives you an opportunity to sneak up on your quarry, on your game,
Mhm.
or even sneak up on a squatch that might be sitting down on a stump eating or doing something. And he's not aware of your presence because he can't hear you. He can't
Mhm.
smell you. It's pouring rain out. Uh,
Mhm.
it's a fog bank. The visibility is it's low. So you might get a close encounter that's hopefully not a physical one, but you might get lucky on one. Um, I've snuck up on game all the time. You know, I like to track. If it's a dry day and leaves, I would like to put on a pair of wool socks over my
Mhm.
boots. I don't want them to think there's an elephant walking around, or especially me at 200 and 15 pounds. They're gonna think there's an elephant walking through the woods. So, stalking with wool socks just to minimize my sound and how I always like to walk slow. I walk a few steps, stop, look around, walk step, stop, look around. I don't go trashing through the woods like an elephant, like a rhino just blowing right through everything because you're disturbing everything. And not only that, you're not paying attention to the ground and looking for sign. The faster you move, the less you see. Remember that. Especially when you're searching for evidence on the ground. So, Gary, you got anything to collaborate on that?
No, because we just talked about this. I mean, the rain when it's raining is my favorite time to go out. And I was telling you this before the show. For me personally, like you said, the leaf litter is sopping wet, so they don't hear you walking through the woods. You can actually stealth your way now through the woods because it's not as loud all the way around. The rain dampens the whole forest, so all the smells, as you said, the rain kicks all that out. So now you've taken that, it dampens any kind of stuff that you may be giving off. On top of that, I don't listen. The reason people don't go in the woods as Bigfooters are a couple reasons. One, it's uncomfortable. We understand that. That's common sense. Two, they're all about, a lot of people are all about hearing the vocalizations and trying to hear the wood knocks, things like that. And when it rains, it's a lot harder because once again, you're just hearing the rain around the forest and things like that. And it's a lot louder. For me, just personally, I'm okay with not hearing any of that because when I'm in the woods, I'm looking for either tracks, I'm looking for sign. I'm not actually out there looking for wood knocks. I'm not out there looking for vocalizations. Now, if that happens, awesome. That's awesome, right? But that's not why I'm in the woods. I'm not in the woods looking for a wood knock, or I'm not looking for an audible sound. I'm looking for some kind of, I don't want to say structure, but maybe a structure, something different in the woods that is outside the realms of the normal woods. I'm looking for tracks. I'm looking for disturbances. If I have like my gifting area or any kind of experiment I have set up, I'm checking that out. You know what I mean? So I'm not really looking for a lot of audible stuff. So to me, the audible stuff, I mean, it's cool. We hear it, great. But on the rain days, I'm out there to do different things. So Footer Nation, if you go out on the rain days, it's okay to not want to hear stuff because there's other stuff in research that you can do. On the rainy days is when I set up all my stuff. So I'll go out into the woods on rain days and set everything up because it's gonna, like Will said, the next day or that night, guess what's gonna happen? It's gonna clear up and the whole woods is gonna explode because now everything gets up, Everything starts walking around. My scent has been covered because of all the rain. So that's to my advantage. And now possibly, which I could only hope, a Squatch something is going to come by and be like, oh, well, what's this? And they're not going to smell me because it's already been saturated around the area. And that's the hope. If it's true or not, I don't know, but that's the way logic goes, right? So use the rain to your advantage. All right, Will, I got itches. So let's go on. So now we found a track. We're in the woods. You've backpedaled. You checked behind you. So now we pretend we kind of set up camp already. All right, so we're where we are. We did all of our vocalizations and stuff, okay? We get some responses. Now it's dark now. So now it's pitch black out. The only thing we have is our headlamps, all right? So in whatever else we have, any kind of illumination. From a wood standpoint now, we hear coyotes and we hear these other sounds. How do we now determine what we're hearing in the woods?
Well, it all depends. Being in the woods a long time, we tend to recognize sounds very carefully. But the main thing is to pinpoint where the location of that particular sound is coming from. Okay, so if we're in a campsite and we set up what we call a fob, and we're all relaxed and everything. All of a sudden, we hear these screams. We want to mark down which direction the screams were coming from. We have to pinpoint that area. How many times did the calls come about? What time was the call coming in at what time? And what's the location on graphic wise? Was it on a mountain, a ridge, a valley, a stream? Was it in the lowlands? Was it, so now we have a map of the general area. We have a direction of the calls. We have a time marked about the calls, and that the calls were repeated all throughout the night. Certain things and recordings of this particular call. So if we hear a pack of coyotes, we know something's up. A lot of times when they're screaming and calling, there's a kill involved somewhere. So maybe the Squatch is also screaming out to the coyotes to veer them away. He's already pinpointed their location, and he's going to go maybe take upon himself to gather that kill that they have and to eat it and take it away from them. So we need to strategically be ready for the next day morning's event. Are we going to go out in the middle of the night and go looking for that call? I don't really think so. What we need to do is pay attention to how a group will be in a full circle, and everybody has a pencil and a paper and we mark down how many calls, the sounds, or whatever. We have to literally become tight-lipped of what we're doing. Not even a word is to be spoken in the camp during the calls of what we're hearing, because we don't want to disturb the animals and then they clam up. We want them to let them make all the vocalization so we can analyze what's actually going on. My thing is, even a simple call has to be recorded, dated, logged, how many calls. If you have one of those recorders that can pinpoint the decibels and how loud it was, and then we can listen to it the next day and compare it. What if we go back to that particular area a couple of months later and hear the same call? Was it the same type of call? Was it this? Is there any similarity or relations to each individual that made that particular call? Or was it just a simple other animal mating calls, that sound really different? That's something that you don't hear, like bobcats screaming through the woods or mountain lions or whatever. We need to understand wildlife as well, because we need to distinguish what is and what isn't and separate what we're actually hearing. But you can't overlook the simplest thing. Sometimes a simple whistle, and then all of a sudden it went away. Who would make that whistle? Is it a human or is it a Squatch? Nothing goes unnoticed. I don't care of what you think you didn't or think. Everything has to be logged, because we need to get a better understanding of our field work, because that's what separates us from them. A lot of researchers, they just want a bigger piece of evidence, but yet they walk around and walk over tiny bits of pieces of evidence without realizing what they just walked past. Even a simple hair on a grass blade, or a broken grass blade, or a blood stain on a bark, or anything. Or sometimes even to take a little, you could walk around the field and you find some kind of vegetation that's chewed off on the top. You can see the teeth marks, or you can see any, there's always evidence of everything that can be consistent to what is and what isn't. You just need to pay attention. You can't overlook. If you want to be a research for first time guys, I suggest write everything down. It's so critical and it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, I keep saying we live in the world of technology. We live in the world of, you have gear. Once again, gear all over the place. So we don't even have to just write everything down. You can buy a cheap $20 digital recorder and or use your phone and just record it. Speak into your phone and record your notes if you forget a pen or pencil, if you don't want to bring that. Will and I are old school, so we like to write stuff down. But once again, there's all these ways that you can document everything. And that's the key word: document, document, document. Once you find anything. Now, the problem though, sometimes we got to really dissect things, because when it comes to a lot of these tree structures, and it comes to a lot of this kind, and even wood knocks and tree knocks, we got to really understand that the forest can really do some things. Tree snaps, straight lines. You gotta learn the woods before you really go into Bigfoot field research. What I mean, what is it? I would say 99% of any kind of Bigfoot research is understanding real life situations in the forest. 1% is actually Bigfoot research itself. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. I totally agree. Not every tree you see broken is a Bigfoot. I see trees broken 2 feet off the ground, some broken up 6, 7 feet, even 8 feet. Bear break trees down every day. They scratch their backs on trees. Um, a mountain lion or even a bobcat could climb a small thin tree, and then all of a sudden he's too heavy, top heavy, and he breaks it over. The sun, a lot of people don't realize that Mother Nature, even the sun shines in one direction, the trees bend to that direction. A winter storm, an ice storm, trees bend over, and then some of them recover after the storm is gone and the sun comes out and the ice melts. But a lot of times they get bent over so much they don't recover, and the tree just stays that way for quite some time. Um, you have to distinguish, and I hate to say this, to all the squatches, never get discouraged on the simplest things, but you also have to learn to take criticism. Don't get uptight with your fellow researchers. Don't get uptight because somebody on Facebook or social media says, well, I think you don't know what you're looking at. You know what? Just follow your own research, believe what you feel is right. But even me, I'm wrong a lot of times. I'll share it with Gary, I'll share it with Joe, and if they say, hey, no, this is not it. You know what? Then it's not it. Until we can find conclusive evidence that it is it, everything is just hearsay. So even my own research that I present, there's going to be my team and our team will dissect each other and find out what is and what isn't. And if my track is certain and Joe says, hey, this is not normal because it's certain thing, I think this is man-made. And then Diane looks at it and everybody, and we all come to the conclusion that the track that I thought is a Bigfoot, it actually is a person that, has some big feet and he's walking barefooted or he's got some Crocs on. And then, the weather actually is distorted the track, which happens many a times. Dissection is part of research, and you can't get discouraged with anybody and get uptight because someone has another opinion that I know you want to believe, but I want to believe. I saw something when I was young and I still believe, but I still want to see more evidence. I'm gonna like pretend it didn't exist until I find further evidence. I have to do more research, and it's gonna get dissected. No matter what I find, the team that we work together has to break it down to what evidence that we're gonna have to present. I just not gonna go say, hey, we found a track. I see a million Bigfoot pages showing, oh, we found this from this lady's property. We found this, but there's no measurements. There's no analyzation of the property itself. Did they walk in the woods a couple of 100 yards? Was there any tree breaks? Was there any pathways in the high brown swale or in the goldenrod where they bent over? I saw a lady send me a picture, 2 red eyes. And so what? A white-tailed deer buck. All the male deer on whitetails, their eyes are red and light, and the does are green. So you see a pair of red eyes. How do you know that wasn't a buck standing in the distance of a hill and you saw a pair of eyes? Look how close the eyes were. Now, if had it been a squatch, maybe the eyes are further apart, maybe 3 or 4 inches even wider, or 6 inches wider, especially if he's bipedal and 6 feet high. So why was this photo was a low photo where you can see the ground, and then the eyes were no more than 3 inches tight? So that showed me that was a deer.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to And I know people get uptight because they want to believe. I know everybody wants to believe, but if you know whether we believe or not, we still flesh and blood. We need to show the actual evidence, and in evidence, dissection is the most important thing because when we come to a conclusion, we want to bring out the truth. I don't want to go pulling your tail, say this is this and this is that and this and that. You know what? I'm not all about that. I'm not here for the fame and glory. I'm not here for publicity. I don't care what you guys think about me. All I care is that me and Gary and the Mao team wants to find out, is there squatches in the New York State? And there's been many reports, but we need to go out there and get more evidence. This is part of what enjoying the great outdoors and research. It's not just research. We enjoy what we're doing. We're bringing
Exactly.
skills and bushcraft and medical. We're bringing everything to the table because we not only need answers, but we need to protect each other. We need to understand each other. We need to form an affordable team that works on everything. You know, when I go to a campsite, I'm not going to be worrying about other things. My thing and my importance is I want my team to have their tent set up. I want to set up a perimeter security. I want the fires going. I want dinner ready, cooking for my. I'll sit down and forget my work for 20 minutes and do the cooking. If I got to clean the shit that's around the camp area, so be it. That's what I have to do. My responsibility is each other,
Mhm.
and that's how it works. So if you pick up a good team or buddy system, make sure the people have the same mindset as you are, and honest mindset. And listen, you have to take criticism. It's very important. This is what makes the best of each other, is because we learn the better understanding. uh we put these videos out, and we're going to make more videos of all different topics, but safety is the main issue. Importance of, for beginners, is you have to heed and listen to what we're doing. We're not pulling your chain. These are years of experience. We've made a lot of mistakes. We got hurt many a times. I've got lost many a times.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things, but you know what? I recovered, I learned, and I evaluate my mistakes, and I capitalize on it to make myself that much better. If I can do it, you can do it. Pay attention, guys. So this is from me to you, and let me get back to Gary.
No, and that's what it's about. And it's okay to be wrong. Listen, we're
Yeah,
all wrong. We're all wrong. And it's okay. You got to just learn to be okay with being wrong. There's no experts. We're all trying our best. We believe, you know what I mean? Like we believe. I've seen two. I've seen two. I believe, but that doesn't mean I don't want more answers. You know what I mean? So it's once again, you just got to accept that it's okay with being wrong and just move on, and that's what it's about. So our really good friend Joe at Western Europe Bigfoot here. I mean, this is for beginners. This is basically what you need. And I'll post this again. You just need, surgical gloves, as we were talking about a little earlier, tweezers for any kind of hair samples. Also for first aid, you got to start pulling splinters and things like that. I mean, you can use tweezers for multitude of things. Plaster, once again, for casting and things like that. Like I told you, I always forget to pack my plaster half the time. So, I mean, just keep it in your bag at all points in time. A tape measure, as Will said, for measuring and, showing size of what you're in, dimensions of what you're doing. If you can't use a tape measure, just use sticks. Take sticks, use your cell phone, use something. Take your shoe off. You take your shoe right off and put it right next to it. Just or something for dimension and size differential and things like that. A camera, which now a lot of these cell phones have better cameras on them than anything. And if you have one of those really nice cameras, those nice DLSR cameras, definitely bring one. And even not even for Bigfoot, you get some awesome nature pictures while you're out in the woods. Plastic baggies for samples. Also, plastic baggies are great if you don't have gloves. You put the plastic bag over your hand, and now you made yourself a glove, and you can pick things up. Kind of like if you have dogs and you got to pick up their poo. Once again, you can do the same thing when you're in the woods. And small envelopes for collection. Once again, you could put all your specimens into small
yeah,
envelopes. I use old film rolls. For when you used to have from film from back in the day, canister film, you can just put everything right into those film things. I have a ton of them, and we use, once again, you can do that. Ziploc bags also, because they're watertight, and they're easy, and you can use Ziplocs for everything. They're kind of like zip ties. Ziplocs and zip ties in garbage bags, they're great for a lot of things. So that's basically a simple kit. I mean, that just to bring for Bigfooting. That's not including a first aid kit. You should always have a first aid kit with you with basic first aid supplies, no matter what. And then headlamps, extra batteries, things like that. That all comes within the survival aspect of Bigfoot, which that even before you build your Bigfoot kit, you should always have your 10 essentials in your backpack. And once again, you're always set to go. And 10 is a really low number because there's you can always add to it. But once again, it's always good to have that. And mostly bring extra water. Always bring extra water with you because let me tell
Yeah.
you, you get dehydrated quick. And there's so many. I always carry electrolyte powders with me. There's so many electrolyte powders on the market that even when you start getting dehydrated when it's hot, put those electrolyte powders in there and it zaps you right back to life. Because once
Exactly.
I mean, Will, you'll agree. Once your hand starts swelling, you get to that point where when your hands swell, guess what? Bushcraft doesn't exist anymore. Holding a
You
knife
know,
doesn't
one
exist.
one of the things in bushcraft, and now we'll get into the medical talk, is um, in survival, you have your medical bag you put in your backpack and stuff like that. I carry what we call the IFAX, because I train military as well. My IFAX has everything: scissors, has gauzes, it has tourniquet, it has everything. But you don't have to get that high tech. I carry my
Mm,
little IFAC because it's light. It goes on the backpack. It goes on my leg. It can go on any kind of molly setup, which is so easy for me. I got
mhm,
all my essential gear. My medical gear is just as important as anything. And when you look in the field, with a lot of backpackers, you're always gonna think, have problems with bugs and all kinds of stuff. In Gary's video with his daughter, she explained it all clearly, and they said everything. The basics is not just basic; it's actually what you're supposed to have. Um,
exactly.
but in that field there's a lot of different products that you can also carry. I mean,
Yep.
you have your medical supply, but do you have other stuff, anointments? Do you have my favorite thing for bugs and getting bit on bugs and mosquitoes and stuff like that is, you know other than what we use to keep them away from you, but the simple thing everybody forgot about many years ago, and it's calamine lotion, poison
Mhm,
ivy, sumac. Um, I I I used all kinds of stuff when I caught poison ivy on me once because I was cleaning my yard, and I brushed up against it and I grabbed it and I just tossed it to the side. Didn't realize it's poison ivy and I got all messed up. But the only thing that seemed to work and control the itch and the pain and everything was the freaking calamine lotion. It worked wonders. And my mother told me about that, and it was old school. Um, but there's also in bushcraft, you learn that if you don't have certain adequate medical supplies, there are stuff in nature that provides for you that you
mhm,
can use to heal yourself. Uh, one of the biggest stuff, you walk around, you find peppermint plant. You
mhm,
just take it and you mulch the leaves and everything, and then you coat your skin on peppermint oil. Bugs hate peppermint oil. Um, there's a lot of things, the wood ash and the sulfur you can use to prevent bugs. I used to carry a cork, and I, instead of wearing camouflage makeup, which is all messy my face gets all messy because of the sweat and stuff, I just use ash and put it on my face, and guess what? No mosquitoes touch my face.
mhm.
Um, Gary talked about Vicks vapor works wonders. I put it on my dog when I'm on the field with him too, because it prevents the mosquitoes and the horse flies from bothering the dogs. Um, Bushcraft teaches you to utilize your environment for safety, for medical wise as
Mhm.
well. You know, when you're on the field and all of a sudden you're injured your leg, you're not really a broken leg, but your leg is sore as hell and it's hurting bad. Anti-inflammatories, what kind of you find in the field? There are natural plants that have anti-inflammatories. You just got to know which ones to look for. Um, your food source runs a little, or maybe you just plant, or you can pick mushrooms, you can pick certain things. Mushrooms I recommend you be a little more skilled for, to understand
Yeah.
exactly what I want you picking a poison mushroom and then get sick. But
Same thing with plants
knowing
too.
what's in that time of the year in your environment, that's what bushcraft also teaches you. um we're gonna do a gear thing some point during the weeks, me and Gary, and then we'll go over the
Mhm.
same gear. His daughter brought out so many fantastic, and I just want to shout out on national TV that I'm so proud of her, because not only is she helping teaching the kids, she's actually sharing her experiences with certain things Dad has told her well. And and believe me, by the time she hits our age, she's gonna be 10 times better than all of us. I know it. This is something we got to teach our kids as well.
Hmm.
Bushcraft is a multiple uh, source of information of every detail. You know, do you know how to use a bathroom in bushcraft? I could teach you how to make a place to sit down and do your business. You could
Yeah.
dig a simple hole, but you don't want to dig a simple hole and bend down and then crap in your own pants because your pants are down. There's a lot of different methods. As funny as it sounds, what if you run out of toilet paper? The simplest thing that people tend to forget to bring. Wipes don't last forever. A roll of toilet paper is probably better in a Ziploc bag than carrying a pack of wipes, because how long is that going to last? Water straws, filtration systems, your tarp to collect rainwater so you can make drinking water. Everything that we gonna talk about is so vital and important, not just for
Hmm.
Squatch researchers, for just being on the field, whether you're hiking,
Being a
camping,
field.
or anything. We don't take shortcuts. We go through the extreme to try to explain, and we're gonna do some on actual videos on the field when one day when we have a chance to do so, to
Hmm.
teach you those skills. From fire starting to you name it, every single thing, even plant identification, so you know
Yep.
what you're looking at before you even touch it. So this is why it's all important. As for new guys in the beginning in research, I suggest you know, you study as much as you can. There's a lot of good information. When I say throw the rule book out, I mean throw the rule book out because you need hands-on, but you still need to
Hmm.
learn to read and identify certain things, and
Correct.
take your book with you in the field and compare that plant. Take a look at it, taste it. One of the hardest part of survival is adapting to eat certain foods in certain situations. Think about it. If I gave you guys a can of spam and you ate that for a couple of days, I bet you guys all be vomiting and sick to your stomach. Why? Because you don't eat spam on a daily basis. Same thing with plants in the woods. If you have to learn to eat what's out there so your body can adapt to the taste and the texture, and I know a lot of it's bitter, but there's certain ways to control that bitterness and when to pick a plant. Same thing like dandelion, antioxidant. You pick it before it flowers, and then after it flowers is the best time. And then you pull the stem out and you take certain leaves at the lowest point, which is less bitter than it is in the highest point. Um, Sometimes certain plants are edible, but then the best proteins are in the roots on the
In the
lower
roots.
areas.
Yeah.
You look at cattails. Cattails are the greatest fire starting material. You know, you think it's a hot dog, but it's not. But that whole thing has so much. It's just like lint. You can catch fires and make
Yep.
fires. Roots are one of the highest source of protein. Is when you pull the cattail and chop the roots up, and then you mash it down, and a little bit of sea salt and a little touch of olive oil, and there you go. I know it might not taste good because you're not used to eating. So here's the thing: bushcraft teaches you to eat something that's out of your norms, but then it teaches you the actual survival.
Yeah.
Reason why you learn this is because if you're on the field, there's no one to help you. You need to know
Nope.
this for yourself.
No. And we got to remember, and let's be honest, Will, right? Before we end, bushcraft costs money. Okay, it costs money. So for your knives, for the things that you bring in the woods, it may not cost. It costs money. It really does. So when we're out in the woods and we're doing that, I showed Will last week on a rainy day. I was redoing one of my axes. Well, let me tell you, for a good hatchet and axe, you spend money. Okay, my
Oh yeah,
knives. I once again, like my hand saws that I use for bushcraft, they cost money. My flip saws, because you want to get the best quality. It's all about quality. You
yeah,
spend the money to get the quality. My knives, I'm a knife snob. I only use Mora knives because Mora knives in the existence of knives, they are one of the best, most compatible knives for everything you do. So, but then you get into what kind of grinds, Scandi grinds. You get into all these different subject matters. But when you do bushcrafting, you're gonna spend money just to go out into the woods and then start doing what you're doing. So we got to be real, and then think about, like, Will. I mean, our rucksacks alone. Like, think about how much your molly packs and your rucksacks cost and those kind of things. My Go Ruck bag cost me $280 just for the bag, nothing else, not including molly pockets and every other thing. So when we start getting into bushcrafting, it costs money. So remember, if you're gonna start doing any kind of Bigfoot research, and let's take the Bigfoot 1% Bigfoot side, and let's set that aside for a second. When you go into the woods, all right, you're gonna get a backpack, you're gonna get first aid kits, you're gonna get knives, you're gonna get lights, headlamps, you're gonna get water systems, pouches, camelbacks, you're gonna get paracord, you're gonna get glow sticks, you're gonna get a multi-tool, because that multi-tool is gonna help you once you break a strap and you need to then start sewing stuff back together with needle nose pliers, which I've had happen multiple times, hence why you have a multi-tool. It costs money. And then that's just for that. That's not including the nice pair of boots you're going to buy, because footwear and socks are the most important things while you're out there. Because the minute you get hot spots and blisters, guess what? It doesn't matter what you own. It doesn't matter if you have $500 worth of gear if you have a hot spot, right, Will? I mean, that's no fun, you know? And then on top of that, you're going to buy clothing, right? You're going to have base layers. You're going to have under base layers. You're going to have hiking clothing that's durable, that can go out into the woods, and maybe canvas type, you know, militia stuff, which you can get some of that cheap at like the Army Navy stores and things. But even Army Navy is expensive. And Army Navy is now expensive. It's not cheap like it used to be. So you're going to spend money when you do bush crafting, regardless of what type of bush stuff you're doing. So then once you build your kit, you're then it'll be a lot cheaper, because then you're only using fishing line, things like that. That's a lot cheaper to then start doing what you're doing. But it costs money. I mean, let's be real.
It does. It does. It really does. And you know, it's worth the money and you have it. If you don't have the money, you can buy a little at a time until you have all the necessary gear that you need. Don't shortchange yourself. It's like clothing.
No.
You know, you don't want to wear garbage, because at the end it's going to affect you. One of the most important things in bushcraft, in medical, and everything is you. And I'm going to bring this out, everybody: mental conditioning and physical conditioning yourself before you start research. You know, a lot of times I go, and now listen, I'm 54 years old. I go to the mountains almost every month. I train dozens of guys, and I hike, and I've been doing it for so long, and I hurt myself one day, you know, on my ankle. I tore my Achilles tendon and everything else. But I can't stop. I have to walk every day. And, you know, I weigh my gear. You take all your gear and you weigh it. You put that backpack on. And when you start to walk with all that gear, you're probably going to be minimized for a certain amount of miles and a certain amount of time, because exhaustion is going to eventually kick in no matter what. So before you get yourself, and this is to all you newbies out there, before you go out there and start doing your research, I suggest that you guys start taking some walk in the nature trails and exercise. I like to carry a weighted vest, let's say 55-pound, 60-pound weighted vest. And I wear it and I walk all the time. So that when that time comes and I decide to do my research and my gear is only 30, 40 pounds, hey, I'm feeling good. I can actually cover more miles and distance, because I can mentally condition myself and condition my body for it. I also like to make sure that my overall health is ready for that situation, because, you know, as you get older, it gets harder and it gets tougher. I mean, you got a lot of guys and a lot of guys that are very skilled, but, you know, be honest with you, you know, time and age comes to a big factor. It takes a lot out of you, and you don't have that endurance like you did as when we were 18, 19 years old. So my advice to all you researchers out there is, you want to go out and search for Squatch, you got to get in shape. That Squatch can walk that mountain 10 times in one night. That he can cover that whole mountain. You can't even cover half that distance in just an hour. You know, think about how much what is your limitations, study your limitations, and try to log yourself and get yourself in shape. You know, if you could do 5 miles during a week, within less than a month's training, you should be doing 10 or 15 or 20 miles. There's no reason, ignorant, you know, there's no excuses. You know, you owe it to yourself to keep yourself healthy and physically fit and ready. And like when we discussed the medical before, with teamwork and learning how to apply those, you can have all the medical gear in the world, but you got to know how to apply it. You know how to use it. You know how many of you guys know how to make different? If I give you a triangle bandage, can you make a tourniquet out of it? How can you make an arm brace out of it? That's why I like to teach medical skill earlier before they go on the field. And I suggest you all do learn the medical before you go on the field, so you can be better prepared for yourself. You know, I'm an older guy and I can't move as much as I used to, but there's nothing that's going to stop me from not trying. So I'm always exercising. I'm always walking, no matter what. You can be a big person on top, but if you exercise, you should be fit enough to do so. Without, hey, it's better than having a heart attack if you're not. So you better pay attention to your health. Make sure you're ready for it. Mental conditioning, physical conditioning, and when you're sitting out there and it's pouring rain or 8 below 0 and you're sub-zero temperatures, you better be mentally ready for this and be able to
Yeah.
deal with nature's you know brutalness, because if the animals could adapt to it, you can, but you have to be aware of your surroundings and know how to prepare for it. There's an old saying, fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Hmm.
So the choice is yours. And I take this serious. I mean, I do this on a daily basis, and I enjoy this myself.
Hmm.
But in a serious note, God, when you're out there, it's dangerous, man. I mean,
Hmm.
anything can happen. You don't know. It could be the beautifulest day and it'd be the worst nightmare they'll ever experience. So
Hmm.
prepare yourselves. Be ready. There's no reason you should not have what you actually need. Go over your bucket list. If you don't have something, ask Gary, ask me, ask Joe, I'll ask any of the team researchers. They can, give you a list of what you might need. You know, help you on how you look for research and look for signs and evidence and everything else. You want to learn tracking? Come down to New York State. I'll set up a date. I don't want no money from it. I'll teach you guys how to track. You guys want to donate anything? Donate it to the organization to buy more gear for members, or to buy more stuff that we can utilize on the field for research. Um, it's free. It's just a matter of your time when you want to sit down and learn. I'll do the best I can. I don't know everything, but we as a team will bring everything to the table and help you guys. So if there's something you don't know, don't feel free to ask. Don't be embarrassed. Why don't want none of you guys getting hurt out there? Me,
Hmm.
Gary, and Joe and everybody. We laugh all day long, but God, we take this so serious because, you know, going out there is a whole different world. And when we got to go to work, we go to work. It's like a job. We joke around, but it's time to work, we work, and then we have our free time. But most of
Yep.
all, we make sure that we take care of each other and prepare for whatever happens.
Yep.
That's so important. So first time big for researchers, pay attention, bring your stuff.
And that's the
Okay,
whole
don't
point
trust
of the
anyone.
show. It's the whole point of the show. So I hope someone out there just takes what we're saying and and takes that and runs with it. Now, me and Will are extreme. Okay, like we have no problem throwing all this weight in our backpacks and vests, and we go into the woods craziness, right? But me and Will are a different breed of person. But I 100%, you have to be in shape when you go into the woods. Okay, especially if you're going with someone else. Think about this before we end the show. If you're going in the woods with somebody else and that person gets hurt, are you going to be able to help them back out of the woods? Because you're using your energy. Now you have that person's weight on you somehow. Think about that. Same thing with dogs. Okay. You bring your dog into the woods, you go hiking a mountain with the dog, and people overlook this. You have, are you able, if your dog ends up getting something stuck in the pad of its foot, okay, ends up something happening to its foot, one of its legs, are you going to be able to carry your dog 3,
That's right.
4, 5 miles down rock scrambles or wherever you went in the woods back to the car for safety? Let's be real. Are you going to take resources from search and rescue and make them come out to save you and your dog or the person you're with just because you're not physically fit, or with a person that you're able to then go out of the woods with because you can't handle if something happens to them? This is what I think about all the time when I'm in the woods. I make sure I'm physically fit, not just for myself, because you only have one body. You have one body, one life. That's it. You don't get a second body.
That's right.
So this is your one shot to get it right. Like I said, me and Will are extreme. I mean, I'm training for a 50-mile endurance race right now. So, and I train with a rucksack with 30, 40 pounds on my back running 10 miles. that we're not saying go out and do that. We're not saying that. Okay, if you want to, that's awesome. We'll be there to help you throughout the way. But you need to be able to carry these things that you bring in with you out of the woods. So if you go on a nature hike, be able to at least have 10 pounds on your back. Your water alone that you bring with you, if you bring extra water with you, guess what? That's like 8 pounds right there of just water. Of just water. Not including the other stuff you'll pack for just a day hike. That's not even including wintertime. That's why they call wintertime shoulder season, because you carry twice as much. So,
Exactly.
so just be aware that when you do, and this is all tied to Bigfoot research, it really is, because you're going into the woods. We want you to come out of the woods in one piece. Like Will said, learn from our mistakes. I used to live in Maine. I owned a house, 250 acres of land, a log cabin home, my dream home. Guess what? As experienced as I was, I got lost in the Maine wilderness for over 12 hours. I ended up coming out on the state highway. I didn't even know how I did it because I was lost. I got turned around in the woods, knowing everything that I know. So it happens. Like Will said, spam. I lived in Hawaii for a long time. And guess what? In Hawaii, spam is a delicacy. They eat up spam in Hawaii. They sell it at all the restaurants in Hawaii. You used to be able to go to the restaurants and spam was on the menu. I'm like, what is this? A spam? That's so crazy. So it's true though. You got to understand that when you're in the woods, it's a whole different world. And that's the thing. Just always be prepared, because it's not just about hiking when you're doing Bigfoot stuff. Because you got to remember, when we do Bigfooting, we're not on the trail. We're only on the trail for a short period of time. And then we disappear into what's called the backwoods, if you want to call it, the back country. And if you're not in shape, and Will tell you, when you're not walking on a trail anymore and you're now going bushwhacking, guess what? That endurance kicks in, because it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to walk through the backcountry than it is to stay on a nice open groomed trail that the trail masters and people like myself and Rachel do, trail stewards, that we cut the trees for you and make it look all nice for you. Because when you're in the bush, it's totally different. So this is what we're leaving you with. All right. And we hope that you at least take something out of it. Like I say, the main thing is we want you to be safe. 99% of Bigfoot research, for all the new people out there, is learning the woods. 1% is the Bigfooting. And why do I say 1%? Because we don't know what Bigfoots even do. Let's be honest.
That's right.
We know footprints, right? We know the Roger Patterson film. That's what we know. When it gets into tree structures, wood knocks, that's all subjective. So,
and what happens when we do ever, God forbid, come upon an actual Bigfoot? How we react to it? How are we gonna deal with that situation? Are we gonna panic? I don't think so. Not us, because we're already preparing for this. But in a same situation, like Gary says, you guys and the beginners have to pay attention to every little detail. You got to be smart about it, and you got to prepare for it, and you have to make sure that you're properly equipped for it. And safety is the biggest factor of everything, because if something happens, what are you gonna do? Like he said before, you ever go out in the ocean and you can't see land no more? What's the first thing that happens? You panic. Could you imagine the wilderness when there's miles and miles of dense vegetation and you can't see in front of your face? So, everything is critical, and we're gonna bring so much to the table with survival, with bushcraft, with basic preparations. Don't look at the simplest things. His daughter, which I'm so proud of, she says a lot of little things, but those little things are so important. I mean, you'd be surprised how many adults can't even follow those little things. And she's to me, she's the light beacon for our children, because children need to hear other kids say that and share their experience. And she's going to be bigfooting with us also, in the near future.
Yep.
But
So
most of all, let's get ready for what you guys got to do. And you guys that are starting this whole research stuff, pay attention. This is an enjoyment thing. It's it's also research. It's something that if you're into the outdoors, so much to learn. And at the same time, we need to protect each other and prepare. You know, my thing is I'm going to go on the field with these guys, but behind the back of my head, my responsibility is my team.
yep.
And while they're out there doing work and I'm out there doing work, I'm going to check each and everyone's vital signs. I want to check everybody's health. I want to make sure everybody's hydrated. I want to make sure that no one's feeling any pain or discomfort. If they are so, treat it as necessary. Even if it's a simple little bruise, never overlook nothing because it could turn into something much worse later on. Um, the buddy system, we discussed that and everything else. You guys really, really take the heed to what we're talking about. We're putting up these videos for a particular reason. There's a lot of
Right.
mistakes made out there, and a lot of people getting hurt out there, and a lot of people are wannabes, but not really paying attention to the exact data that is being, you know, taken on the field. If I told you for every track I saw and everything, there's not 1 ounce of evidence, measurements, nothing, blah 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 blah. It's just hearsay in my eyes. I don't care if you show me a track. If you don't tell me anything about that track, date, size, age, depth, weight, so how many inches for how many pounds body weight? If it's like 3 inches deep, how many? Is it a 200 pound, 300 pound person, or what is it? Uh, if you don't know, now you know. Go out there and study. Go out there and learn. Pay attention. Um, this is why I'm here today. I met Gary and I reached out to him. Why I reached out to him was the importance of honest opinion and honest research. And you can feel it when somebody's the real deal. You know, I test him, he doesn't even know it. I test him a million times and he's on the ball. He already has the answers many times. Joe, forget it. Joe knows everything that needs to be known out there. Our team is all skilled in different levels and together as a team, just the same way you establish your teams, or if you join our teams or join other groups, you want to make sure that everybody has experience on different playing field levels because everybody's experience becomes critical and important into working as a cohesive team on to getting the job done and enjoying what you need to enjoy with safety and confidence. The scariest thing is going out with people that don't know nothing and being left alone in the dark. That is
Mhm.
horrifying,
Yep.
especially for a newbie. So be careful out there and make sure you got your stuff straight. And I'll let Gary finish with any of the closing arguments or any other questions that we got. If you guys got questions, say it now, and
Yep.
we can follow through.
No, and if there's any last questions, we'll take them because we're gonna get out of here. Because I mean, once again, Will and I will be back for a lot of these shows. We're gonna dissect plants and poisonous plants and things like that. Because I know Loretta has brought that up in the past about that
I'll
stuff.
even cook for you guys.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
there you
cook
go.
some wild edibles and show you how it's cooked, and we're gonna eat it in front of you guys. How's that?
We can really get into all this kind of stuff because this
Bushcraft
is important
101,
stuff.
baby.
Yeah, it's this important stuff that we need to always go over. And,
Yeah.
we've been talking about this forever. And now we just, today just happened to be the day like Will's like, let's do this. And I'm like, all right, let's do it up. So if there's not any last questions, because this, we did go over a lot. The main thing is this: just heed what we're saying. And we can't say that enough. Remember, one is none, two is one. That means if you have one headlamp, guess what? That's zero. Because if that thing breaks, then you're screwed. If you have two, well, at least you have a backup. Okay. I can attest to that because once again, I've had that happen where I left my headlamp in my car and I walked into the woods, and thank God I had another headlamp in my first aid kit. This is the last thing before we go. If you have a first aid kit, and you have one in your backpack or your bag, I want you to take it out. I want you to open it up, and I want you to go through all your expiration dates. Because once again, no one ever opens up their first aid kits and actually go through everything. Do you have ibuprofen in there? Redo the ibuprofen, redo the Tylenol. Do you have ointments in there? Make sure to look at all these expiration dates. All these first aid kits that you buy in the store that are already put together, most of them have been sitting around for a very long time. So all those little ointments are dried up. There's no more ointments in them. You have bug stuff in there. I want you, please, to take out your first aid kits, just put it on your table. You don't have to do it now because it's late. Put it on your table, open it up, so then you can go and look through everything that you need to rebuy and put back in your first aid kit. So when you now start the 2021 season, you have everything that you need. Okay? It's small, something small, but it's so important. It's so important. All right, so that's all your homework in between now and when Will and I come back. Now, last but not least, expeditions have now started. Okay, so we are now starting to get out. I know Joe's been going back and forth on a camping expedition. All right, so we'll watch and see what he does. Myself, the NYBS, we start expeditions Wednesday. So we are back out into the woods. Recon is done. Scouting is done. Reports are taken. Gridding is done. So I have been super busy behind the scenes doing what Gary does. I have brand new experiments all typed up, ready to go. All right. So we are trying brand new things, brand new areas. Also, we have a Bigfoot lecture in the works. I'll be heading down into the upper Catskill region to do a Bigfoot lecture this summer. Meet and greet. You guys want to all come out and hang out with me, and maybe hopefully some of the ambassadors from the team will be there. Maybe we can put together some, training things while we're there and things like that. I have a lot of people asking me for lectures. So I guess what I'm going to be doing now that things are opening back up because of COVID's starting to free up a little bit, I will be giving lectures throughout all of New York State. So you can come hang out with the NYBS, hang out with whatever crew I can bring. Let's talk Bigfoot. Let's do some demonstrations. Let's just do it up like we used to back in the day. So Joe, Bigfoot loves being lectured at. I mean, you lecture all day long. So with that being said, just look out. We have a lot of stuff coming up, all right? We also, Champ Fest, which is the Lake Champlain monster. Kenny and I will both be up at Champ Fest. That's this summer. Kenny will be speaking. I will be doing the Bigfoot stuff up there, all right? So the table. So we are going to be at a festival, all dedicated to Champlain monsters, but I'm bringing the Bigfoot flair, all right? Because we're keeping it squatchy always. And it's right up in our stomping grounds in the Adirondacks. So I'm super stoked for that. So we'll be coming out to that. So we got a lot of stuff. When is Champ Fest? I don't have the date off the top of my head. I want to say it's August. So I want to say it's August. So I think I will get the date up. You guys can come. If you guys want to take road trips and things like that, come up to Lake Champlain, hang out with us for the day. See who's up there. Come listen to my brother Kenny talk about his new book and things like that. It's going awesome. I mean, he's #1 seller on Amazon. Can't get any better than that, right? So Kenny's doing his thing. I miss him so much because I don't really get to talk as much as I used to because we're both so busy with real life. But he's just doing his thing. We'll be together up at Champ Fest. Lectures coming up. Expeditions are all happening. Listen, Footer Nation, look it. This is all going down now. Spring is here. Now, if the weather cooperates a little bit better with us, that will help out a little bit for us. You know what I mean? But once again, even though it's raining, we're still out in the woods. With that being said, Will, any last words before we get out of here?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for watching our shows, and we're going to bring more to the table as Gary discussed, and I really appreciate everybody. And if there's any questions or anything we can help you make you that much better, your success becomes our success because we want you to do the right thing for yourself, and your safety is our biggest concern. There's going to be other videos later on. We'll discuss medical, and as Gary stated, I'll even open up the IFAC and teach you guys how to pack certain things, the way the medical bag is supposed to be packed. What to bring, there's different backpacks. You got your regular backpack, you got your go bag in your car, and you have your 72-hour pack, and there's what is the difference between all 3 different packs. We'll go over that and what type of stuff to carry. But when you're on an expedition, your expedition backpack is going to be totally different from your survival backpack. It's going to have more things, and it's going to be a little bit much larger, because you're carrying a lot of research stuff and data stuff. And we're going to go over so many things, even medical training. I'm going to try to do a video with one of my family members and do a live video to show you how to wrap somebody, how to secure them, help them, and whatever. Every little thing that we're going to bring to the table, we will bring it to the table. This is what we're all about. I want to thank you guys for your support. Check us out. Check Joe out. Check Kenny out on his shows and everything else. We keep it real. We keep it honest. We're just normal people like you and I. We're not showboating. We don't care for fame. We just want you to be the best you can be out there researching. And for those who are beginning, hey, there's always room for more on the team. Thank you for your support, guys. I really appreciate that. And hopefully we can bring some evidence to the table soon.
Yep. And that's where we're at. So thank you for joining us. The show was nice. It was a long show, but it was a good, lots of information. And I always want to give out a shout out to my boy Joe at Western New York Bigfoot Research Organization.
Guys, check him out.
Head on over to his page, love, do whatever, buy some of his stuff. He sells
Mike
all sorts
from Long Island, another great guy.
Yep, and our boy Mike from Long Island Bigfoot. He's
Diane, everybody.
Yeah, he's amazing. Diane, she's the gifting queen. Like, you know what I mean? Rachel Carnan, they're both amazing researchers.
Oh, yeah.
We're all doing
our little researcher, your daughter.
And then McKenna is doing her thing. We have our show.
Got me smiling. I love it.
We have our show, New York Trails with Tales. If you're interested in just all things outdoors, me and her will be traveling the state, doing hiking trails, doing videos, kind of like on a family basis. Get the kids involved. Yeah. She used to be a scout, so she was one of the first girls in Boy Scouts. So she has scouting background. So that's what we're kind of doing. So with that being said, Footer Nation, as always, keep it squatchy, and we'll see you out in the trail. Deuces, everyone.